Drugs don't just get people high, they often progress straight from a high to death. As drug deaths rise, new, more dangerous drugs continue to emerge. This list will alter your mind by making you aware of just how deadly or strange some of the increasingly abused and concocted substances are becoming. We profile today a chemical rogues gallery of deadly and deceptive substances prowling the streets of our modern world. For some of these substances, any dose is an overdose. Number 10. Crocodil. This terrifying new drug originates from a modified base consisting primarily of codeine mixed with noxious chemicals. The effects are horrendous, mimicking flesh-eating disease and bringing on gangrene, withering, and ulceration, causing limb loss, flesh decay, and death. Apart from real photos of users, scenes from The Walking Dead offer the best possible artists' renderings of the effects. The problem has a significant root in Russian and Ukrainian drug-using circles, associated with many cases of serious body damage and death stemming from its highly caustic, psychoactive, and diverse toxicological characteristics. The composition of Crocodile makes it corrosive to the body. Thus, it not only can trigger mental problems, cognitive difficulties, and addiction, but it acts as a solvent and inflammatory agent in the body. Flesh damage and circulation problems frequently precede infection. The name for the drug, Crocodile, is a reference to the reptilian look that green dying flesh that dries out and becomes scaled appears to be after use of this drug. Media reports have exaggerated its occurrence in the United States, but its use in Russia, Ukraine, and nearby places is presenting a bona fide health hazard. Number 9. Fentanyl and related substances. Fentanyl is a drug that is more like a plague among drug users than a sought-after substance, in some cases being extremely dangerous to use, but also often cut into more prevalent drugs, often with deadly effects. Other times, fentanyl, a pain-killing opioid, is deliberately concentrated and abused for its narcotic properties. Huge numbers of deaths are occurring, most notably in Canada and other parts of North America, from overdoses on fentanyl. Indeed, this drug has an extremely low threshold for causing a deadly overdose compared to more normal drugs, prompting a certain degree of panic. As if this was not bad enough, the related but even more deadly carfentanil is becoming increasingly available for misuse, many times more potent, 100 times more strong to be exact, and is often used to tranquilize an elephant in the veterinary and wildlife management professions. The incredibly potent drug has caused a rash of fatal overdoses in Western Canada in recent months, as noted by the BC Coroner's Service. In one case, a kilogram of carfentanil was intercepted at a Canadian port of entry. Canadian officials have been working with foreign representatives to attempt to halt the movement of illegal synthetic opioids across the border, but efforts have not stopped the deaths. Number 8. Smiles. A deadly synthetic containing iodine, among other things, in its chemical formula. Smiles, which is an acronym for Simplified Molecular Input Line Entry System, is a drug that has caused a wide range of symptoms, including seizures and other neurological disturbances, as well as mental problems and death in adults and teenagers who use this designer drug. The drug is used in multiple forms, including liquids and powders. The truly horrific consequences the use of this drug can bring about stem from its initially quasi-legal status. Law-skirting drug pushers and chemists have attempted to jump ahead of controlled substance legislation by creating so-called designer drugs like Smiles, but the new and untested chemicals can be extremely dangerous. Smiles is now illegal, having been documented and described, but it is still out there. Deaths can result from overdose, while mere use can provoke extremely dangerous medical complications. In one case, a user was found hitting their head on a hard-paved surface, foaming from the mouth and dying 2 hours after being found. Extremely serious hallucinations may also cause fatal accidents as users misjudge their surroundings. Number 7. Flakka. Triggering dopamine release, Flakka is a strange synthetic drug that is used at the peril of anyone who tries it. The side effects can include breaks with reality and related chaotic and destructive behavior, as well as euphoria, aggression, and death. Coming off the drug carries a risk of depression in the process. The drug, known as Flakka on the street, came into existence in the south of Florida, where it has cut a swath through the lives of individuals lured by another high. The drug is a synthetic that mimics the effects of the khat plant, a primarily African and West Asian drug of natural botanical origin, but it is much stronger and much more unpredictable. In fact, Flakka is similar to methamphetamines in its effect, yet even stronger. A wide variety of disturbing biological effects may crash down on those reckless enough to use it, including crazed behavior, euphoria, and high levels of anger. The drug is highly addictive and is capable of causing serious damage to the human body beyond temporary or lasting mental disturbance. Tissue damage can result due to metabolic stimulation as the body temperature rises in users. Kidney damage is one of the worst possible effects. Number 6. Synthetic marijuana. The risks of real marijuana are as real as air and water, but are still incredibly mild compared to the truly horrific dangers posed by the fake stuff. So-called synthetic marijuana, often called spice or K2, is a true nightmare for users and medical professionals alike. Consisting of various chemicals sprayed onto dried plant material, the product has ended up for sale in places as diverse as gas stations and alcohol retail outlets. While it might not seem like a hard drug, the doctored garbage can have effects that are incredibly deadly. The effects of synthetic marijuana can include paranoia, death, blindness, heart problems, incoherence, aggression, panic attacks, and loss of consciousness. Sneaky labeling techniques include branding the medicine as incense not for consumption to try and avoid prosecution for selling the dangerous product. Exposure can be made much worse by the synergistic or combined greater effects of multiple ingredients attacking the body together, while the random nature of artificial, so-called synthetic marijuana makes treating medical complications much harder for medical staff compared to a more normal drug overdose. Clearly, all that can be said here is don't smoke spice. Number 5. Cactus abuse. If some shady characters approached you and asked you about wanting some cactus, you might not be receiving an offer for a new houseplant. Getting you hooked on a strange, natural, but potentially dangerous drug might be their real goal here. Not at all like an artificial drug like many others in this video, the chemical derivative of certain psychoactive cacti, known as mescaline, presents a drug problem common to southwestern climates. San Pedro cactus and similar cacti are spiky plants that could get you higher than a tree and sicker than a dog should you mess with them. Mescaline can cause disturbing symptoms, including a loss of identity and perceptual disturbances. While cacti extracts have a history of use by native tribal leaders, shamans, and the like, mescaline has become a drug of abuse for those seeking an escape from reality. With the use of mescaline comes some very concerning side effects. Rather than being physically addictive, mescaline tends to trigger psychological dependence as well as physical tolerance, causing increasingly large doses to be required to create the same psychoactive effect. Rehab involves both controlled withdrawal and efforts to resolve life circumstances that could provoke use and dependence. Number 4. Rubbing alcohol. Normal alcohol, known as ethanol, will get you plenty drunk and comes in the ingredients of familiar drinks like beer, wine, and whiskey. But for some people, too much whiskey is not the problem. Another alcohol, never intended for human consumption, has some truly grave consequences. Medical grade and industrial grade isopropyl alcohol products are commonplace, prized by various industries and consumer groups as disinfectants, surface cleaners, hand sanitizers, and wound care products. With a potent smell, the chemical, often known as rubbing alcohol, is strong and will get a person drunk pretty fast, but there are serious complications. Just a small amount may unleash a horrific host of symptoms with blindness, brain damage, and death among the awful possibilities. Abusers may huff or drink the noxious substance that was never intended for human oral consumption. Part of the problem is because of a lack of knowledge about alcohol and that there are different types of it. Some types are drinkable in moderation, but some are as bad as poison. Number 3. Snake venom abuse. Being bitten by a venomous snake and taking an overdose of a dangerous drug are often viewed in the same light as being two deadly fates for a person to meet. But the two problems are almost never related to one another, so it might come as a surprise to most people that certain drug addicts are taking terrible risks by abusing snake venom as a drug. While snake venom might seem to be the last thing one would want to select as a recreational substance, it is a fact that snake venom has been tapped for its properties that are comparable to opioids in some respects. While the use of snake venom as a drug is rare, it is nevertheless a substance abuse problem that has prompted some rather unusual scholarly research. In a most bizarre case that exemplifies the rare problem, a young man from Rajasthan, India, had been using opium among other substances and had turned to relatively small doses of cobra venom inflicted through bites. His drug dealers were nomad snake charmers whom he recruited to assist him in getting bitten, causing bizarre highs and a range of nasty physical symptoms. While he could have easily died, researchers helped him to get clean from his snake venom addiction. Number 2. Extreme caffeine abuse. The health benefits of a cup of coffee are well known, and tea and Coca-Cola, which has not contained any cocaine for years and years, offer drinkers a little caffeine as a mild stimulant. Yet caffeine functions as a powerful drug in concentrated doses, and with the availability of more and more powerful caffeine products, the chances of an overdose loom larger. Take certain sports drinks and even concentrated caffeine tablets, and the opportunity to abuse caffeine presents itself readily. Even more dangerous is caffeine powder that has been refined to purity. Caffeine lowers appetite, increases increases heart rate and respiration and serves to wake people up. But too much caffeine can cause a heart problem known as ventricular fibrillation, which happens when the lower heart chambers vibrate instead of completing regular contractions. With the abnormal heartbeat, cardiac arrest can follow. As of 2018, 92 deaths have been reported as a result of caffeine overdose, where users abused caffeine products with fatal results. Caffeine overdoses are believed to have been suicides in about 1/3 of the overdose cases. Number 1. DiPT. DiPT is a banned street drug that is known for potentially causing hearing damage. DiPT is a prime example of why hallucinations can be extremely dangerous. Considered an auditory hallucinogen, the drug functions in a manner somewhat comparable to LSD, but is known to produce auditory hallucinations to a greater degree compared to visual ones. Classified as a Schedule I controlled substance by the DEA, DiPT is not accepted for medical use in the United States, but is sanctioned for research projects such as tests on animals. Users have been known to snort, inject, or smoke the drug for a high that is shorter than that produced by LSD. With frequent use comes increasing potential for long-term damage. Given that the drug messes with people's auditory perceptions, long-term damage affects similar human senses. Users have reported long-term hearing difficulties following use, while cases of King-Kopetzky syndrome have occurred. In this disorder, people struggle to separate background noise from distinct acoustic occurrences. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, you know what to do. Please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe. Brand new videos just like this every day of the week. For more from me, why not check out my other channel, Biographics? I'm going to link to that below. And as always, thank you for watching.